You do not know the power of the dark side. I couldn't resist. Okay, now keep your eyes closed, because did you hear the difference? Shh. Okay, now let's be sure. For your challenge, you tell me, just say now, when you hear the panel start to move. Okay? We'll relax into this. Good, excellent. Open your eyes. All right. So, just a few centimeters, you would notice the difference. You've experienced sonar. You'd all make great blind people. Let's have a look at what can happen when this activation process is given some time and attention.
It's like if you guys can see with your eyes, and we can see with our ears.
It's not a matter of enjoying it more or less, it's about enjoying it differently.
Goes across.
Yeah.
And then it's gradually coming back down again.
Yes.
That's amazing. I can like see the car. Holy mother.
Yeah, I know. No.
We're passing a tree on the right. I think you're okay.
I love being blind. If I had the opportunity, honestly, I wouldn't go back to being sighted.
The bigger the goal, the more obstacles you'll face. And on the other side of that goal is victory.
Stop. E allora? E allora? E allora? È stato bellissimo vederlo, Juan. Vieni, vieni.
Now, do these people look terrified? Not so much. We have delivered activation training to tens of thousands of blind and sighted people from all backgrounds in nearly 40 countries. When blind people learn to see, sighted people seem inspired to want to learn to see their way better, more clearly, with less fear, right? Because this exemplifies the immense capacity within us all to navigate any type of challenge, through any form of darkness, to discoveries unimagined when we are activated. I wish you all a most activating journey. Thank you very much.
Daniel, my friend, that, as I know you can see, is a spectacular standing ovation at TED, and thank you for an extraordinary talk. Just one more question about your world, your inner world that you construct. We think that we have things in our world that you as a blind person don't have, but what's your world like? What do you have that we don't have?
360-degree view. Okay, so my sonar works about as well behind me as it does in front of me. It works around corners. It works through surfaces. Generally, it's kind of a fuzzy, three-dimensional geometry. One of my students, who's now become an instructor, when he lost his vision after a few months, he was sitting in his three-story house, and he realized that he could hear everything going on throughout the house. Conversations, people in the kitchen, people in the bathroom, several floors away, several walls away. He said it was something like having X-ray vision.
What do you picture that you're in right now? How do you picture this theater?
Lots of loudspeakers, quite frankly. You know, it's interesting. When people make a sound, when they laugh, when they fidget, when they take a drink or blow their nose or whatever, I hear everything. I hear every little movement that every single person makes. None of it really escapes my attention. And then, you know, from a sonar perspective, the size of the room, the curvature of the audience around the stage, it's the height of the room, like I say, it's all that kind of three-dimensional surface geometry all around me.
Well, Daniel, you have done a spectacular job of helping us all see the world in a different way. Thank you so much for that, truly.
Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you.
All right, so what did you think? What was your takeaway from that video?
My takeaway was like this. He was describing us like a blind person's point of view.
Okay.
And like this, like how they like see things, and like yes, yes, it's a disability, and but like it's a disability that I'm gonna have to live with, but with just like little by little, I can have a normal life like everybody else.
Okay. Yeah. Now you brought up two things there, Mitch, and I'm gonna kind of toss this out to the rest of the class to see what your thoughts are as far as. First of all, would that be accurate to say that that was a disability? If you asked him if it was a disability, what would Daniel Kish say? What is somebody else in class? What would you think his take would be? What's that?
He would say no, that being blind is not necessarily a disability to him, because he has the power to like uncover more of his brain and use more of his brain than most of us, because we think that, oh, just because we can see, oh, we don't necessarily have to use our brain. But because he's blind, he used like more of his brain to do stuff than we normal people usually do. So
yeah. Remember we were talking about the visual cortex and the occipital lobe last week, and how that produces what we interpret as vision. He's still using those parts of his brain, and he still has spatial recognition.
I actually agree with what she said.
Right. But we're trained, and I'm not picking on you, Mitch, in any way, because we all had that language in us, that disabled and disability. And while that does provide certain comforts for some people, it also limits our thinking and lets us know, because Mitch, the other word you said is normal. So I'm going to toss this out to the group. What is normal? What determines what is normal?
Society determines what's normal, I think.
Okay.
Most of the part, if you look unusual to people, they will classify you as, abnormal. So
exactly. And if you remember back to what I told you at the beginning of class, humans are two things. What are they?
Prideful.
And lazy.
Yeah.
Right. So again, and this goes back to how we view the world and make sense of the world, because we want things to fit in certain containers. We want things to be nice and packaged and easy for us to remember and deal with on our daily basis, because things that are different causes our stress to go up. Because we're on alert. We're trying to figure out if what we're dealing with is going to help us or hurt us. And you're probably asking why I'm bringing all this stuff up, because it all lumps in to how we perceive and sense the world around us, isn't it? Okay, because we talked about how the brain is like a computer, and we have all these processes going on. We have all this storage and stuff going on. But in order to get that, we need to have an input. We need to get information in. And normal, as you described, is how most other people are thriving in the world, and they're moving around, isn't it? So when we see something that's different, that's where our stress goes. That's where we say we need to determine whether or not that is a friend or a foe. And until we can put that abnormality or that idiosyncrasy into a nice little container where it makes sense to us, we're going to constantly look at that as a threat to how we do things. Okay. So this kind of goes into sociology. I mean, we could just unpack this all day, couldn't we? But at the very root of it is our sense of what is normal and what is abnormal. And in his case, his world is normal to him, right? For us, we call that remarkable. We call that a disability. We call it many things. So anyway,
I personally think this, and I actually think it's good for this. Like, he doesn't let it stop him from living life. I think that's the main thing. Like, I think that's one of the main thing he hopes that those people in the audience, what he hopes that they understand is that I'm not letting it stop me from life.
Because fear does what? What did he say fear does to us? Does anybody remember? Fear immobilizes us, doesn't it? So when if you think about your personal challenges in your life and doing something different, the thought of doing something different, maybe it's getting in an online class, or maybe it's even going to college, or maybe it's getting a job. All of these things cause us panic and fear because it's different. And we have a reputation, and this goes back to our pride, how we're prideful. We don't want to be wrong, okay? So failure, for many of us, we look at failure as a disability. We look at failure as something other than a positive, don't we?
Yeah. If I definitely have a fear of failure.
If we fail a quiz, we might think that might be the end of the world for us. But is it really?
But one thing, because like back when I watched a show on NBC called The Biggest Loser, Jillian Michaels, celebrity trainer, would say this to people. Like, some contestants said, like, well, I'm afraid to fail. I don't want to be a failure. Well, she's like this. Well, do you think achievement comes without risk?
Right.
Because like she said this, and I agree with her on this. I think the only time we really ever fail at something is when we just give up.
Right. Because then you have no chance of winning. Right?
Yeah, it's like this. Like she said, like this. Like this. You got to keep trying and trying.
And we're going to revisit this.
Work.
We're going to revisit this topic quite a bit in this class, because we're going to talk about classical conditioning, because classical conditioning is where we learn our fear. It's where our anxieties go up, or where we experience pain or hunger, or satisfying our hunger, and we learn from those situations very rapidly. Okay, so when we get into learning, we're going to talk about fear. When we talk about stress and emotion and motivation, we're going to talk about fear. When we get into diagnosable mental health disorders, we're going to talk about fear. Okay, so fear is going to come up a lot for us. So just that's kind of why I wanted to introduce this a little bit early, because not only does it deal with so many things, it also deals with how we take in the world. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you here quickly, because there are a couple terms, and I know most of you, hopefully all of you, did your reading and your quizzes. Let's see here. So I just wanted to hit upon some of the important parts. Okay. All right. So the two terms that we're going to start out with are sensation and perception. Now, your book, your lesson really talked about both of these very closely and very similarly, right? Because that's what I think that's the title of our chapter, is sensation and perception, isn't it? But what's the difference between the two? Who maybe went through the reading and wants to share what the difference is between sensation and perception? Any take?
I'm gonna try.
Okay, go ahead, Chef Lay.
Okay, I think sensation is something that you feel.
Okay.
It can be physically, you can feel it on your body, and the perception is something like you vision, like you think, or you can see only in your mind, I will say.
So let's say process. Okay, you're absolutely correct, Chef Lay. Good job. So sensation is exactly that. It's the actual physical, either seeing, hearing, sensing, either through taste or through our touch or through smell. And that's information traveling to our brains, okay? Perception is how we organize those signals through our neurological pathways, okay? So we get all these things that maybe we feel a breeze in the air. Maybe it crosses our nose and we can smell something different. Our hair follicles maybe move a little bit. Our skin feels a little bit cooler. And all of these signals alone really don't mean a whole lot to us. But our experience and how we learn to take in the world around us tells us exactly what that is, okay? So you're taking all these signals and you're building an image, similar to what Daniel Kish was talking about, sending out those signals and knowing from experience that when I hear a short wave bounce back at me, that means that something solid is probably really close to me. So he's been able to adapt his sensation to perceive the world around him. Does that make sense? So to that end, when we go back to talking about neurons firing, right? They're all or nothing. Do you remember that part? I think I use the analogy as a toilet flushing. But it's really, there's no level of indication whatsoever. So you can't, like, if you take a pin and put it into your fingertip, you're probably going to feel that, right? You're going to feel that a little bit more the more you push down on that, because now you're having more, you're having different receptors triggering and firing to your brain. Now, that doesn't mean that one of those neurons or one of those pain receptors is more important than the other. It's just that more are firing, and that's where you get the feeling of intensity. So to that end, looking at, let's see here, looking at our, we'll use pain receptors. Now, I actually do this experiment with my live classes, and I tried to jog my brain to figure out a way to do it with this class. But what I do is I have students come into the class early, and before they get there and they sit down, I play an audio file, and it's just a hum. It's a really low, I put it down to like 1 decibel, so you can barely hear the thing. And then each minute I up it another decibel until we get about halfway through the class, and it's a pretty loud hum. And I ask everybody to in the classroom to raise their hand if they notice something different about the class today. And maybe a couple hands went up and all of them got it wrong. Now, why is that? Why couldn't they hear a 30 decibel hum in the class?
They get used to it after like a certain amount of time.
Yeah. I think maybe you've all heard of a frog in a pot, a frog in a pan. I think boiling
frog in a bucket.
Frog in a boiling bucket of water.
Draw a bucket of water. All the
right, because they grow to notice that. So that illustrates what we call JND, or just noticeable difference. Spelled noticeable wrong. Noticeable difference. Okay. So J and D are just noticeable difference. Oh my gosh. Difference. There we go. Well, so it's the smallest difference detectable 50% of the time is the definition that your book gives. Now, what that means is if I did 1 decibel per minute, okay? And that was not detectable to them. It doesn't seem like it's getting louder. And maybe some of you can relate to this. Maybe you have somebody in your house, either a partner, a family member, a friend, that gradually turns up the stereo, gradually turns up the television on you, right? And maybe they do it so gradual that you don't notice until all of a sudden you find yourself shouting just to hear yourself talk. That's just noticeable difference, because you don't notice until it's time for you, until it's actually important for that to happen. And 1 decibel per minute isn't a whole lot. Now, what do you think would happen if I bumped it up to 10 decibels in a minute? Do you think they would have noticed it? Probably more of them would have noticed me introducing something to their environment. So I beat that just noticeable difference to the point where they were able to detect that something happened, okay? The other term I want you to be familiar with is absolute threshold. Now, this is a little bit different than JND. And the reason, threshold, is, remember I talked to you about the pain receptors in your finger, and maybe holding a pin. And I'm not saying you have to try this, but maybe at some point, maybe taking your pen or something and putting it somewhere on your body. Now, you have more touch receptors and pain receptors in your finger than you do most other places in your body. So maybe on your arm, if you put your pen or pencil on your arm and just touched it a little bit, you can kind of almost feel it. But if you use your finger, it feels a little bit more intense, right? You feel it a little bit more stronger. And that's because you have more receptors in your finger. So absolute threshold is describing the amount that it takes for a stimulus to be detected 50% of the time. So that might be a sound, that might be a sight. And if you can imagine, I think the book used the example of looking at a candle in the darkness a mile away. It's probably going to be very, very hard for you to really see a candle a mile away, right? But you get a little bit closer and you're gonna detect that a little bit more easily. So 50% would be the amount of whatever the distance and brightness it takes for you to be able to say, hey, I see that now, okay? Stimulus to be felt 50% of the time. All right, makes sense, right? Now, a lot of your book talks about sight. Why is that? Why do we focus so much on sight, do you think, in psychology?
Excuse me, sir. What sight mean?
Sight, vision.
Vision.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was going to talk about it after we watch the video, because I think the vision is very important because it gives us a lot of information about the world that is around us. So.
Right. We spend a lot of our time for the people that are able to use their eyes and use their vision. We spend a lot of time looking at things, right? We like movies, we like reading, we like seeing the world around us. That occupies a good portion of our energy, of our mental process energy, doesn't it? The other part, what do you think the second most, what would be the most energy that what sense uses up more energy or less energy than sight? What's that? Hearing, yeah. Hearing it takes up a lot of energy, right? Because we need to understand language. We need to understand the world around us, and if there are any threats or anything moving behind us or beside us or above us or whatever. Yeah. So we spend
is it like this? Like the very first second, like we hear a sound, like what's natural to do. The very first thing, like we usually stop, and like usually look and like use our ears to see like where the sound is coming from, and then we like determine like with our mind like whether that sound is good or is it gonna put us in danger.
Right. So
it's like this, like in school, like if you hear an alarm go off, that tells like automatically, like your brain is telling you need to get out of the building.
Right. Yeah. So hearing is very important for us, isn't it? Because it lets us know, it works with our vision to tell us where something is, right? And this is another experiment I do with my live classes, and it's a lot of fun, is I have them shut their eyes. And it's called stereoscopic audio. But I move around in the classroom and I'll just like make a noise or something and have everybody point safely. Because the first time I ever tried this, I had a lot of injuries, people poking each other. So that didn't work out so well. But, just getting them to understand how your mind processes that, because you're getting the same signal in both your ears, but based on the latency and the level of the intensity, right? And even the pitch, we can tell certain qualities about something without even seeing it. We can tell where it is in the room, right? We're using that visual cortex without seeing to point out where something is in the room. We can tell if it's moving, can't we? We can tell if it's coming closer or going away, because of how we learn to experience the world through our ears, right? So we do spend a lot of time with vision. And one of the things that I kind of want to just highlight here with vision is the how we take in signals through the lens of through our eyeballs, right? Our eye structure. So as you can see, and I got a little diagram that comes up here, but the image comes in and it focuses at a point on our retina. Now within our retina, we have all sorts of sensory, all sorts of receptors in there. And two of the biggest ones that we know of are called cones and rods, okay? So cones are for day vision. And why that's helpful is that helps us see what? Color.
Light?
Color. Yeah, light, color, absolutely. Why do you think?
Have you ever did a with some of the exercise you did, like with what you just said, like it helps us see color. Have you ever tested students to see if they were colorblind?
I don't usually. I mean, I don't call people out in class. If somebody is colorblind, I certainly don't ask them to reveal that. But yeah, I mean, the colorblindness is actually pretty popular, and more people have it than what you would think is normal. But so thinking back to evolutionary psychology, right? Because we want to pass on genes that are important for survival. What importance do you think color vision has with survival? Why is color important?
Does it help?
Go ahead.
Does it help identify like different things?
It
They
does.
could be a danger.
It does. Being able to see colors through maybe the forest or something, it will help you identify predators, right?
It helped me one time when I was walking at night and I saw an animal that was black with a big white stripe down its back.
Okay. We'll get to night vision here in a minute, but being able to tell what might be edible, right? If you see berries, that might be an indication of food. Now, we are, as I mentioned, we are seeing a higher emergence of color blindness. Now, what does that do? What does that indicate to us as far as the importance of color in our survival today? Do you think it's nearly as important?
It is very important.
It is. We think it is, right? It's not as important as it used to be because we needed to use color vision to identify food, to identify threats. And today, maybe, but could we survive if we don't have color vision?
Sure.
A lot of people do.
We can. But
A lot of people do, right? So that's a trait. And I just only bring that up because we talked about evolutionary psychology and genes being passed down. And that's an example. Same way with smell. Smell used to be very important to us for survival, and it still is. I'm not saying it's not important, but being able to smell helped us identify food and helped us identify danger back in the day. Today, our olfactory bulb, our olfactory senses aren't nearly as powerful because we don't need them. We don't need them nearly as much, right? So cones are for day vision or color versus rods, which are night vision and primarily restricted to black and white. Okay. So that's basically all I really wanted you to take away, because a lot of students get confused as to what the cones do versus what the rods do. Okay. All right. So I know we're kind of running up on time here, and I wanted to, I didn't have time to really cover all the senses here today, but the important thing is I wanted you just to take away that along with your reading is the importance that we place on these senses. Okay. As far as perception goes, looking at perception just really quickly is the method by which our sensations are organized, right? So we take in all this information and we organize it in a certain way that we've learned through the experiences of our lives. And again, what do we have any more? We don't meet again this week, do we?
No.
Okay.
No, next time we meet will be on Monday.
Okay. Well, maybe I had some pretty fun things to cover with perception here, and I am running up on time, so I won't be able to get to them today. So what I do want to do is just afford some time to see if there are any questions about the assignments this week. I know many of you have put in for your group exercise, your group project. I did receive them. I'm going to be working on those diligently tomorrow. I've been teaching all day yesterday and today, but I'll have some time tomorrow to put those groups together, and I'll send everybody the list. So look for that in news and announcements. Okay.
I uploaded my assignment 3 last night. If there's any issues with it, please let me know. I can always redo it if it didn't meet the criteria.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'll let you know for sure, and I'll give you feedback. And I'm going to be, like I said, pretty lenient for the assignments. I understand not everybody has Word, Microsoft Word, and it's kind of a challenge to get everybody on the same page. But you're all doing great. I will say, yeah, everybody in this class has been getting things in on time, and I thank you for your cooperation and your patience with everything. Okay. All right. Any questions for me? All right. All right. So if nothing else, I'm going to hang around for just a few minutes if any of you wanted to talk to me one-on-one. So other than that, thank you for your attention. Have a great rest of your week. Make sure that you're getting packed back in on Sunday nights, 1 question and 2 responses. And just out of curiosity, how's everybody liking that? Is that, I know it's a little different.
First, but then, because I thought it was going to be a bit challenging, so then I thought, just type and respond. I was like, oh, this is like a discussion thing on D2L. Like, this is, so I was like, I can do this.
What are some of your other thoughts?
I always think I sound annoying when I give somebody feedback. I always think like I don't know what to say. Like, oh yeah, I agree with what you said. I love that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because like one thing I have to be aware when I'm giving feedback is like this, because like when you give feedback, you can't just respond by saying this, like, this sucks or looks good, like provide. Like that's the challenging part, but like that's what it takes, because like when you respond to someone, you're giving your perspective on it too.
Yeah, and I like one of the things that drew me to this is I teach a lot online, and I certainly don't like to be repetitive. So I put a question out or something, and everybody responds the same way, and it's you know, for me that feels awkward. So I think pack back works a little bit better, but. All right. So with that, again, thanks for your patience. Thanks for your attendance here, and I'll see you all on Monday.
Monday. Okay.
You have a good one.
Yep. You too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.